Jennings.
For the latest news and information anytime, log on to abc7.com. We'll see you at 11.
Good night.
When you see news happening, call the Eyewitness News tip line toll-free at 877-777-NEWS.
On World News tonight, thousands of workers at General Electric on strike because the cost of health care is going up. So many companies under health care pressure and passing costs on to their employees. We'll take a closer look. The American pilots in court today facing 60 years in prison. They say their commanders deserve the blame. The Pakistani man who was killed by a white supremacist. Now the government wants his family to leave the country. They say they were victims of 9/11 too. And the latest technology to see the brain at work, actually watching it make decisions.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to begin tonight with the cost of health care because today it has caused the first national strike at General Electric in 33 years, which once again highlights the effect that health care has on the whole economy. Today at GE, 18,000 workers went on strike in 23 states. It was intended as a warning to the company that there is more trouble ahead when the company passes on the cost of health care to employees. Our first report is from ABC's Betsy Stark.
The strike started at 12:01 this morning and will last 2 days.
Their top 5 execs made over $41 million in cash compensation. That's where the cost should be made up.
Thousands of workers braved the bitter cold to protest the rising health care costs GE has imposed on its workers and retirees.
We've proven to them we'll stand up and fight back.
GE is expecting record profits this year, but the company says with its health care costs up 45% in the past 3 years and still rising, the time has come for workers to pay more.
We wish we didn't have to do it. We don't like doing it, but that's the reality of the marketplace.
GE estimates the typical worker will pay another $200 a year in higher co-pays for medical specialists, prescription drugs, emergency room visits, and hospitalizations. Workers' unions put the cost at twice that amount.
Easier.
GE chemical technician David Smith figures his medical expenses could go up by $1,000.
Stephen, it's time for your medicine.
6 years ago, his son Stephen had a kidney transplant, which still requires frequent visits to doctors and hospitals and lots of prescription drugs. Smith says the family's one vacation a year will have to go.
The people who sit in these offices and they do their number crunching on their calculators, they really need to understand the faces and the effects that they have on other people. And I don't think they do.
Many workers said today their greatest fear is that this is just the beginning, that higher costs and greater sacrifices are ahead. Union officials called the 2-day strike a warning to GE not to push too far.
Health care is going to be a major, major issue in 2003 and beyond. So I genuinely and I sincerely believe we are carrying the fight for all workers in America today.
This spring, GE sits down with representatives of the unions on strike today to discuss a new labor contract. Healthcare benefits are sure to be on the table and sure to be a flashpoint, Peter.
Thanks, Betsy, very much. Betsy Stark, just one other item about the strike. Earlier this morning in Louisville, a woman was struck and killed by a police car while she was walking outside a GE plant. Until now, everybody believes it was an accident. Later in the broadcast tonight, we'll take a closer look at the damage that health care costs are doing to companies in general and their workers all across the country. To the situation between Iraq and the U.S. now. The potential for war is the #1 topic in the Middle East every day. Today, the Egyptian president, Hosni Mubarak, was in Saudi Arabia to meet the king. They agreed in a communique that diplomacy had to be given a chance so that in their words, or in the words of their communique, more human disaster could be avoided. ABC's Terry Moran is at the White House tonight with the latest as seen from there. Terry?
Peter, for the president, the time of testing Iraq and its willingness to comply with UN resolutions is fast coming to a close. But the rest of the world is looking at things very differently.
Meeting with the president of Poland in the Oval Office, Mr. Bush sounded impatient with Baghdad and with the inspections process underway in Iraq.
Time is running out on Saddam Hussein.
He must disarm. I'm sick and tired of games and deception. And that's my view of timetables.
That dismissive tone marks a sharp shift from the president's last comments on Saddam Hussein just 8 days ago.
And thus far, it looks like he hasn't complied. But he's got time.
No longer, it seems. The administration is now preparing to force a showdown at the UN over Iraq sometime shortly after January 27th, when weapons inspectors will report back to the Security Council. But as inspections continued today, there were few signs of support for that kind of timetable. The chief UN inspector said his January 27th report was best seen as one stage in a long process.
We can see a lot of work ahead of us beyond that date if we are allowed to do so.
The inspectors are just getting up to full speed.
UN Secretary General Kofi Annan backed up that argument, and even Tony Blair, Mr. Bush's staunchest ally in confronting Iraq, believes the inspectors need more time.
Really, the last week was the first week that they've been carrying out their work with their full complement of people. But, you know, none of us are putting speculative or arbitrary timeframes on this.
But President Bush is putting pressure on Saddam Hussein and on allies like Mr. Blair. Part of it, however, may be for show, Peter. Officials say that the main U.S. goal over the next couple of weeks is to convince Saddam Hussein that he has no choice but to comply.
Thank you, Terry. Just before Terry goes, a question about North Korea. But first, today's developments. A U.S. envoy in China was told today that China would host talks in this crisis between the North Koreans and the Bush administration. At the White House, the president said he would not be blackmailed, but he also said he would consider a new aid package for North Korea if it abandons its nuclear weapons program. So, Terry, the question for you is, are we watching a disagreement within the administration itself?
We sure are, Peter. There have been major disagreements over North Korea policy since the president took office. Over at the State Department, diplomats have been pushing a conciliatory tone, trying to show North Korea there's some kind of light at the end of the tunnel. In other parts of the administration here at the White House, there's a tougher tone, and the result is that the U.S. is sending somewhat mixed signals to a very erratic and unstable ally in a dangerous situation.
Thank you, Terry. Tam Moran at the White House tonight. In Louisiana today, at Barksdale Air Force Base, there was a preliminary judicial hearing to decide whether 2 Air Force pilots should be court-martialed for manslaughter. They were the pilots who dropped a bomb that killed 4 Canadian soldiers in Afghanistan. The pilots argue that their commanders are to blame. ABC's Brian Ross has covered this story for some time. The latest chapter.
Well, Peter, lawyers for the 2 pilots say evidence at this hearing will reveal serious problems in the conduct of the air war over Afghanistan, problems the Pentagon has never disclosed. On the fateful night last April, the 2 American pilots on patrol over Afghanistan had been warned that Taliban forces might attack them from the ground.
I am rolling in self-defense.
But they were not warned Canadian forces would be conducting live fire exercises that night.
Not only did the pilots not know, nobody in the command center on the ground knew.
The command center did not have a Canadian liaison officer.
Bombs away, cranking left.
And it was only as the pilots watched the explosions on the ground that a controller finally told them friendly forces were in the area.
Disengage. Friendlies can't harm.
The 2 pilots, Majors Bill Umbach and Harry Schmidt, face up to 64 years in prison. And their lawyers said today they are being made scapegoats to cover up serious command problems.
I cannot think of another case where a pilot has been charged criminally in a friendly fire incident.
The command problems were well known to top officers, according to secret Air Force documents obtained by ABC News. 1 month before the incident, officers warned of a high risk of fratricide or friendly fire. Quote, no one on same page. Safety measures not taken or understood. Theater air control system not functional.
It's a complete failure of the command and control system.
To make matters worse, the lawyers say the top officers in the command center that night were distracted by security arrangements for the return of the King of Afghanistan the following day.
Not with what was going on with the pilots and what was going in the airspace that night, but with the pending arrival of the King of Afghanistan.
The Air Force declined to comment on the allegations of problems in the Air Command Center, but they are considered so sensitive that the Air Force has told reporters covering the hearing they will be banned if they report anything the Air Force, Peter, deems to be classified.
Many thanks. Brian Ross. Overseas again for a couple of items in the overseas briefing. In Britain, a policeman was stabbed to death today during a counter-terrorism raid in Manchester. It's part of the investigation into the poisoned ricin that was discovered last week. 4 other officers were injured, and police said that 3 men from North Africa were arrested. And in France, police evacuated the historic Sacré-Cœur Church on the outskirts of Paris after an explosive device was found inside. Police said there was no detonator, and the device appeared to be homemade. The church is one of the most popular tourist sites in all of France. When we come back, some of the day's other news. First, their father was murdered, and now the family faces deportation. Providing health insurance when costs are soaring. We'll take a closer look at what is fair for workers and for companies. And at the end of the broadcast tonight, the latest technology to watch the brain at work in real time. Very much medicine on the cutting edge.
Gotta go right now. Gotta go, gotta go, gotta go. Gotta go, gotta go, gotta go right now. Gotta go, gotta go, gotta go.
If you've always got to go, ask your doctor about Detrol LA. It's been proven effective for overactive bladder.
Anyone need a break?
Not right now.
You shouldn't take it if you have stomach, urinary, or glaucoma problems. The most common side effects are dry mouth, constipation, abdominal pain, and headache.
And I don't have to go right now.
Detrol LA, when you've always got to go.
Introducing the world's first truck with 4-wheel steering. The new GMC Sierra Denali with 325 horsepower and quadra-steer. Beats everybody, forwards and backwards.
Did you know that tomatoes contain a remarkable nutrient called lycopene? Emerging science suggests that lycopene is one of the ingredients in tomatoes that may help reduce the risk of heart disease. Centrum, or if you're over 50, silver. Lycopene. Another reason,
A year and a half after the attacks, there's still something we'll describe as aftermath virtually every week. Waqar Hassan was a Pakistani who owned a small convenience store in Texas until he was murdered just after the United States was attacked. ABC's Bill Blakemore tonight on what has happened since to his family.
Duri Hassan and her 4 daughters have lived in the U.S. for 9 years and hope to become citizens. The man who admits he murdered her husband, Waqar, 4 days after 9/11, told reporters, "I did what every American wanted to do, but didn't." Mrs. Hassan says the neighbors in their New Jersey suburb proved him wrong.
They are very supportive, and they came to my house and gave me comfort.
The family had been allowed to live in the U.S. because Hassan came on a work visa. Now that he's dead, Duri and her 4 daughters face deportation to Pakistan.
It would be like starting my life all over again. I can work here, I can drive, I can go out when I want to.
Nida, a Rutgers University biology student, is Hassan's oldest. They talked the day he was murdered.
He just told me to be careful.
In spite of what happened, they want to stay.
It's easier to work in America as a woman. Nobody cares whether you are man or woman.
Mrs. Hassan works the overnight shift in a styrofoam cup factory, and all but the youngest girl work part-time jobs.
They are working to make it in America. They're the kind of people we want in America.
Congressman Rush Holt is asking the House to pass a special bill to give the Hassan family permanent residence.
Lawmakers have given permanent resident status to family members of some who died here in the attack on the trade towers, but not to any survivors of hate crimes that were triggered by those attacks.
The victims of 9/11 died because people wanted to take away their freedom. People wanted them to suffer. People wanted their loved one to suffer. I believe that that's exactly what's happened to our family as well.
Unless Congress lets them stay, the Hassan family will have to leave as early as April. Bill Blakemore, ABC News, New York.
In the national briefing tonight, Kmart is going to close another 326 stores and lay off another 30 to 35,000 workers. Company is in bankruptcy already, and analysts say Kmart desperately needs to distinguish itself from Walmart and Target, which have taken a lot of Kmart business. Hearings in Virginia today to determine if John Lee Malvo, one of the 2 suspects in the sniper killings outside Washington last fall, should be tried as an adult. He's 17. Trying him as an adult would make him eligible for the death penalty. And researchers at the University of Maryland report today the number of children being treated with powerful psychiatric drugs such as Ritalin and Prozac increased by 300% between 1987 and 1996. The researchers say the increased use is being driven by marketing from drug companies and health insurers cutting costs. In the short term anyway, medication is cheaper than therapy. When we come back, as we said, we'll take a closer look at the rising cost of health care coverage. Bad for workers, bad for the company, bad for the economy. And the new machine that literally reads the mind. Medicine on the cutting edge.
World News Tonight with Peter Jennings and MoneyScope.com. Brought to you by H&R Block.
Every year, Americans overpay nearly $1 billion in taxes. Let H&R Block help get your money back. We'll double-check past returns free. Those who refiled with us average $1,300 more.
Looking for a snack that's low in fat but still high in taste? Orville Redenbacher's Smart Pop is 94% fat-free, 100% delicious. Pick up some Orville Redenbachers today and start popping smart.
I said move it on over. Move up, hold on. I said move it on over. Move up, hold on, cause a new dog moving in.
Body pain? Back pain? Introducing new Bare Back and Body. It's Bare Aspirin plus a special pain relief enhancer to relieve sore backs and soothe aching muscles fast. New Bare Back and Body. Get moving again pain-free.
Looks like heartburn.
Showtime!
Wait, look! They don't just have heartburn.
They also have pressure and bloating. That's gas.
Oh, no!
Sorry, guys. They need more than just heartburn relief. They need me. Hey, Maalox Max. When you have it all,
treat it all.
You bet. Fast heartburn relief plus strong gas relief. That's Maalox Max.
Thanks, Max.
Just doing my job. Maalox Max. When you have it all, treat it all.
Going to the airport? Hey, Bill, you stayed here too? Yeah, want to share a cab? Deal. All right. Great hotel. Yeah, pricey though. Wasn't that bad. Yeah, if you're a CEO. Why? What did you pay? Here's my bill. I didn't pay nearly that. Not even half. You got ripped.
Hey, buddy, I can get you a great deal on the Brooklyn Bridge.
Save up to 70% on hotels worldwide. Hotels.com. The best prices at the best places, guaranteed.
When you need time off from work to care for a loved one, there's something you need to know about your rights. What workers in every state should know about family leave. Tomorrow on World News Tonight.
We're going to take a closer look tonight at the healthcare dilemma for so many American businesses and, of course, their workers. The General Electric workers on strike today claim that GE can afford to absorb the increased cost of health insurance. This is also an issue for many smaller companies. ABC's Dean Reynolds reports on them tonight from Chicago.
Bob Walters, whose company makes restaurant equipment, knows all about the escalating cost of health insurance for his workers. It eats up roughly 10% of his company's profits.
Every year, it's gone up at least 10%. In this past year, went up 37%. Forced us to switch to a new carrier.
Even then, his 50 workers have gone from paying 20% of the cost of coverage to 35%.
A $60 increase per employee is a hardship. This is not like these are six-figure salaried employees.
Across the country, many businesses have faced double-digit increases in health insurance rates for 3 straight years. In 2000, 65% of firms employing 200 or fewer workers provided health insurance. Today, that number is down to 61% and dropping. That tends to hurt productivity because uninsured workers avoid doctors. They get sick more often and miss more work. To maintain coverage, companies are making tough choices, which may affect millions more workers.
They defer doing a computer server upgrade or adding a couple of more trucks to their fleet of delivery trucks. And that, in turn, really has a ripple effect across the economy.
A combination of causes are at play here: rapidly rising hospital and medicine bills, an aging labor force, increasing medical malpractice costs handed from insurers to companies to workers, and pressure from investors for higher profits, leading companies to trim benefits.
Employees will always look to the owners as being at fault for the continued increased costs, and why haven't we done something about it? But there's really nothing we can do.
And that may be the most frustrating part of the issue.
National surveys say that while most companies will, for the time being, continue to cover their employees, what really frustrates business is the sense that nothing is being done to rein in healthcare costs, and that at this point, nobody really seems to know how. Dean Reynolds, ABC News, Chicago.
You can compare how company health plans are changing by checking something called MoneyScope at abc.com. When we come back this evening, the new machine that watches the brain as it makes decisions. It's medicine and technology on the cutting edge.
I try to swim a couple laps every morning, but never the long way, just from here to there.
I did an all-garlic diet. Lost some friends that way.
Well, I was on a, it's called like 1 meal a day diet. Terrible diet, because midnight, every night I was eating
Sergeant Joe Friday, Detective Frank Smith. They're going to solve the most violent crimes in LA's history, if the bad guys don't kill them first. From the creator of Law and Order comes the return of the grittiest crime drama of them all. Dragnet premieres Sunday, February 2nd on ABC.
Aloha America. Tomorrow, Good Morning America's hanging 10 in Hawaii. The beaches, the luau's, the lays, and lava-hot Hawaiian adventures on Good Morning America.
Just a brief review of the main story. There was the first national strike today at General Electric in 33 years. 18,000 workers went on strike in 23 states, unhappy with the rising health care costs that GE has imposed on workers and on its retirees. Finally, from us this evening, the second report we've done with Time magazine on the mind and the body. In this one, we see a quite astonishing piece of technology that enables us to see the brain at work in ways that were not possible until now. Here's ABC's Ned Potter.
Think for a minute about all the raw data your brain had to process today, all the sensations of daily life.
4, 6, 8.
How does the brain handle it?
Right, PA?
This woman, whom we'll call Annie to protect her privacy, could not do it. 3 years ago, she became schizophrenic, unable to tell reality from illusion.
I started getting paranoid that they were going to come and kill me while I was sleeping, and so I started sleeping in my car.
With medication, she's now much better, but doctors would like to know what goes on inside her head. So they're looking with this breakthrough machine called an MEG scanner.
We can look at changes in brain activity on a millisecond level.
That's because every thought, every reaction is actually a tiny pulse of electricity inside the brain. Weak as those signals are, they reach outside the skull and can be read by the scanner. Other imaging techniques have been able to map the brain with tremendous precision, but what MEG does is add the dimension of time. It can watch changes in the brain as they happen. Look what happens when a healthy person sees a word flashed on a screen. The first signals are in the back of the brain, where vision is controlled, and they quickly spread all over. But in milliseconds, as the brain realizes it's looking at a word, it settles down and just uses this frontal area, where language is stored.
The schizophrenic doesn't do that. Their brain responses are different right from the very beginning.
The result, as shown by the scanner, is chaos, a simple word or tone sending signals randomly around the brain. But researchers now have unprecedented ability to see that in schizophrenia or epilepsy or potentially any other disorder.
The power of that is that
we have a better target at which to point our treatments.
What happens inside your head has been mostly a mystery. But technology such as this reveals the brain at work so that someday, perhaps, its complexities can be understood. Ed Potter, ABC News, Albuquerque.
That is our report on World News Tonight. I hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Peter Jennings, have a good evening. Good night.